The future of ERP and AI here in 2025, how Elon Musk's Chatbot Grok is going to be used by federal agencies in the U.S., and 4 digital strategies that will dominate the future of enterprise tech. Those are just a few of the topics we'll cover here in episode 231 of Transformation Ground Control.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 231. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformation journeys. And this podcast is a tech-agnostic view of digital transformation, including the people, process, technology, and strategy sides of change. Joining me, as always, is our co-host, Darian Chwialkowski. Darian, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for today.
Yeah, it's going to be a great show. We're going to talk a lot about AI today, just to forewarn you. If you don't like AI, you're probably not going to like this episode. If you like AI, you're probably going to like it because we're going to get into a lot of stuff here related to that. We're going to start off the opening segment with some social media questions. We'll get into a couple newsworthy topics. One is how AI is coming for the data center. And we're also going to talk about Elon Musk's AI chatbot, Grok, and how it's going to be used by federal agencies in the U.S. government. And then later in the show, we will have a panel discussion featuring a few different software vendors and an industry analyst, all talking about the future of ERP and artificial intelligence and sort of where are we, what's the state of the union in terms of how AI is being incorporated into ERP systems, and what are some of the other trends that we're seeing in the enterprise technology space as well. So we'll cover all of that with that really in-depth panel discussion later. And then after the panel discussion, we will get into 4 digital strategies that will dominate the future and really helping you figure out how to navigate those different paths that you have, different options you have as an organization. So lots to cover here today, but before we jump into our panel discussion and get into the meat of everything here today, what are some of the social media questions you've got for us here today, Darian?
Yeah, a couple good questions here today. This first one is, how do you design IT operating model or an IT operating model after you came up with the IT strategy? That's
a good, interesting question. I would say you wouldn't necessarily define the operating model after your IT strategy. In a perfect world, I'd say if you could define your operating model first, then define the IT strategy that's best going to fit that. That's going to be the ultimate, the more effective way to handle things. So that's step number one. But if you're in a situation where the IT strategy is already baked, it's already been defined, you're already headed down a certain path, then at that point, I'd say one of the first things you want to do is define what the operating strategy is, because you want to define that future state and define what the needs are of the organization, what you want your future processes to look like before you get into too far into the design and build of the software. So that's how I would approach it, is ideally do the operating model stuff as early as possible. And then if you haven't already done it, I would say now is probably a good time to start.
Yeah, that makes sense. Our second question today is, how much time should a company take to develop the business strategy before embarking on the technology and SI selection?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I don't know that I give you a specific time frame. I can give you in an order of magnitude, depending on the size and complexity of your company. If you're a small company, you might be able to. If you're a small company and you have a pretty clear direction or clear understanding and alignment on what your vision is and what direction you're going as an organization, I'd say you could probably spend just a few weeks on that strategy definition and planning and whatnot before you really get too far into vendor and system integrator selection. But if you're a mid-market or a larger organization, that could take several months, especially if you're not aligned as an organization, if you have a multinational team, if you've got a multinational steering committee, you're probably going to have to take a lot more time just getting everyone on the same page and making sure you all have the same, kind of common aligned vision of where it is you want to go as an organization with your digital transformation. So there's no hard and fast rule, but I will say the biggest variables to how long it's going to take are going to be how big your organization is, how complex it is, how diversified it is. And when I say diversified, I mean operationally, are there lots of different diversified functions, and are you providing a lot of different diversified products? And I also mean geographically, do you have different countries you're operating in with different teams, different cultures? All that stuff leads to misalignment, not because you're managing your company poorly, but because you just get misaligned as you grow and you have more diversification. So it's important to get everyone on the same page and understanding where it is we're headed and what it is we're going to accomplish with this project as soon as possible. So that those are the main variables that'll help you decide or help you map out a timeline for that phase of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. But shifting into our newsworthy articles of the day, we're getting into a couple different AI articles. This first one is talking about AI and data centers. So we spend a lot of time talking about how AI is transforming business models, marketing, customer experience, but there's one place that is making huge waves that maybe isn't talked about as much, and that's the data center. According to the CIO, AI is now reshaping everything from powerful management to predictive maintenance in the data center, and the impacts are pretty wild. So there are 7 big shifts. They include energy optimization, hardware placement, network traffic prediction, security hardening, failure prevention, workload allocation, and generative AI processing. So this isn't really just an IT upgrade, it's a total operational rethink. And I guess I can get into some of the different ways that the shifts are happening within those 7 different areas. So the first one, energy optimization. AI is helping reduce power usage by adjusting cooling systems dynamically. This is crucial as data centers eat up more electricity. For hardware placement, some of the companies are now just using AI to optimize where servers are physically located based on heat output and energy flow. For network traffic prediction, AI models can now anticipate congestion and reroute traffic before users ever notice a slowdown. Security hardening, AI is used to detect anomalies in real time and shut down threats faster than traditional monitoring systems. Failure prevention, predictive maintenance is now a reality. Algorithms can spot a potential of hardware failure before it happens. Workload allocation, AI is deciding which workloads go where based on efficiency, time of day, or even real-time energy pricing. And lastly, with the generative AI processing, data centers themselves are now being rebuilt and re-architected to handle the massive compute demands of LLMs and AI training. Eric, with all of this, how are AI-driven changes in the data center going to affect overall IT strategy for large enterprises?
I think everything you just mentioned is a good sign for what organizations are doing, or what data providers and infrastructure providers are doing to use AI to optimize their own infrastructure that supports AI. So it's kind of interesting how AI is helping AI be more effective in with that optimization and whatnot. So I think as you've got more redundancy and more cybersecurity, tighter protocols, and better use of physical infrastructure assets, I think you're going to see even higher adoption rates for big corporations because they'll feel more comfortable, first of all, especially when it comes to the cybersecurity stuff. But secondly, they'll know it's more reliable and they'll have more uptime and more accessibility to AI, given that they're using AI to optimize that back end infrastructure that's supporting some of these big companies.
Yeah, for sure. And do you see clients building or expanding on on-prem AI infrastructure instead of relying on the public cloud?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I don't know. My gut tells me yes, that you will see some companies that decide to bring some of the stuff back in-house because of many of the concerns that companies have with everything from reliability, as you're alluding to in the article here. There's reliability, there's cybersecurity, which I would say actually cybersecurity is you're probably going to benefit from having a third-party cloud provider provide that cybersecurity because they're presumably going to be able to provide better cybersecurity protocols than any internal IT department is going to be able to, or that most are going to be able to. So that's the one area where I think the advantage is clearly public cloud. But when it comes to data privacy, when it comes to ownership of intellectual property, when it comes to competitive advantage, I think all those things point more towards bringing in-house and on-prem some of these AI, your data and some of these AI tools. Because I think what's happening is that, having been doing this for so long, what happens is the pendulum swings, in favor of certain trends, and then it kind of swings the other way, and then sometimes it settles in the middle. It's a lot like, it reminds me a lot of politics. I mean, you think, just when you think one political party is going to dominate forever, they end up getting killed in an election, and then, the population moves the other direction politically. It's sort of the same thing with a lot of these tech trends. I think right now the pendulum is clearly swinging toward cloud, but we're seeing some cracks in that foundation or chinks in the armor, because now companies are realizing, wait, if we swing too far to the cloud, especially public cloud, we're watering down our competitive advantage. We've got vendor lock. We don't have control of our data. We're not sure what's going to happen to our data, in terms of intellectual property and whatnot. We're training these data models that our competitors are also using. So maybe we should bring some of the stuff back in house. And I think that pendulum will come back and settle somewhere in the middle. But right now it's swinging pretty hard towards public cloud. So we'll see. I mean, a lot of people disagree with me and don't think on-premise will ever come back and that on-premise is dead. I don't think it is, actually. I think there will be a time where we come back and say, you know what, cloud's great for some things, but there's some things that we should keep on-prem, especially for there's some areas where it's just not ever going to go to the cloud because, you've got regulatory issues, you've got constraints. If you're a government contractor or something like that, you have to host, your data in a certain place, in a certain location geographically. So you can't necessarily just outsource it to a cloud provider. So I think there's a lot of trends or a lot of things that'll cause that pendulum to settle back in the middle somewhere, more of a balance.
For sure. And is there a risk for over relying on automation, especially for mission critical infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you over rely on automation, whether it's for infrastructure or any part of a business's operations, I think there's risk there, especially if you don't have human oversight. And that's why I worry about with agentic AI and AI agents is that you're going to get a lot of, I know that's not really your question. You're talking more about the infrastructure, but even, bringing it back to more of a common example we're seeing right now on the front lines is there's a lot of concern around agentic AI, because one of the advantages of agentic AI is it can observe, measure, learn, and then make decisions. And if you let it, it'll just go make decisions and start doing stuff with your data. It'll start transacting stuff with or without your approval. So I think that, a lot of companies are struggling with, well, how do I take advantage of the automation advantages of agentic AI, but still keep that human involvement in it? And I think that's where your process design becomes so important. Your organizational design becomes so important. And so as you look to some of these new emerging technologies, it's even more important than ever to make sure that you've defined how humans are going to interact with the technology.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And switching gears a little bit now to get into our next newsworthy article of the day, we're going to talk about Elon Musk and his Grok AI and the new contract that he just got with the Pentagon. So his new contract with the U.S. Department of Defense just signed a contract worth up to $200 million with Elon Musk's XAI for its Grok 4 government suite, officially bringing Grok 4 and Deep Search into the federal agency use. This places XAI in the same government-facing tier as OpenAI and Google, who also received similar awards under the same procurement push. Grok, however, has been under fire in recent months for generating some highly controversial and inappropriate responses due to a flawed model update. XAI responded quickly, issuing a fix and stating that newer versions like Grok 4 have resolved the issue. Despite the backlash, agencies say they're confident in the AI's performance and see major potential for use cases across defense, logistics, and federal research initiatives. Eric, with this, does this signal a shift in the government and how they're willing to accept AI from vendors?
Yes, and not necessarily all at the same time. I think yes, at the top levels, it shows that the government is theoretically serious about trying these AI models. But what I'm really curious to see and I want to track this too, is I want to see how the government employees and the government operations actually incorporate Grok and or other AI tools into their day-to-day operations. It's one thing to buy the software. I mean, we see plenty of government entities that go out and buy software, but then they never deploy it, or they deploy it and it doesn't go well and it fails. They spend a ton of money on it and it doesn't deliver any tangible value. I'm not saying that's necessarily going to happen here, but the government does have a track record of failed technology initiatives, especially these larger federal government agencies in the US, and then certainly in other countries too. Some of the larger government entities we've worked with internationally outside the US have struggled just in different ways, partially because they're so big and complex, but partially because they're a government entity, and by definition you're going to get politics involved, and they're more likely to be unionized, so you've got union rules on what you can and can't do, and especially if you're talking about automating someone's job, there's unions are going to step in and try and protect people's jobs. So anyway, just seeing all that stuff come together and sorting through all that will probably take years for the Pentagon to figure out. So maybe fast forward 5 years or more from now, we can see where they're actually at in using this technology. But I do think it's at high risk of becoming shelfware. I mean, I'm not saying it necessarily will, but I'd say of all technology procurement use cases we hear of, or case studies we hear of, this would be one where I'd say this looks to me like something that could end up being a big investment in technology that never gets used if they don't deploy it effectively. Not because there's anything wrong with Grok, although there sounds like there is something wrong with Grok on the latest update they did. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is how well they can handle change management and embedding Grok and other AI tools into day-to-day operations and getting people to ultimately adopt and use the software. That's an uphill battle for any organization, but especially a large government entity like the U.S. Pentagon.
For sure. And what standards, in your opinion, Eric, should be in place when deploying AI across these sensitive public institutions?
Well, I mean, first of all, you've got just your sort of normal standards of how you think you could or should be using AI, and why would you be using it in these certain areas? Are you trying to get efficiency gain? Are you trying to make people's jobs easier or whatever? But when you're dealing with a government too, you've got more stringent data privacy and just confidentiality sorts of issues. I mean, every business has that, but the government is just on a whole nother level of needing to protect data and protect information. So those standards and guidelines need to be really well defined, so that if people, let's just say a government employee is using citizen data to train an AI model to help them do their jobs across the government entity, is that okay? I think the government needs to spend time defining what is and isn't okay, what's acceptable or not, where they will or won't use AI, how they protect data, how they'll ensure cybersecurity and just general security overall. All that stuff needs to be mapped out if it hasn't been already.
Yeah, absolutely. And one question to kind of wrap this up: if agencies are embracing it this quickly, what does that mean for every other company? Eric, do you think organizations should balance bold moves with due diligence when it comes to adopting AI?
It's a good question. I was just wondering, as you were telling the story or reading the article or the headlines from the article, I was wondering if it was because the government really wants it and it's pulling these solutions, or if someone that works at Grok or works for Elon Musk is actually just really good at selling software. I don't know which it is, but I imagine it's probably a little bit of both. So I don't know. I think I would take AI with a grain of salt, just like any technology. I wouldn't say I would not go to a company, generally speaking, and say, if you don't double down on AI right now, your business is going to be dead in 5 years. I wouldn't say that, but I do think that businesses really need to be sort of leading the charge, and leaders within organizations need to be leading the charge on how AI is going to be used within their organizations. Otherwise, you're either going to have people not using AI at all and continuing to be highly inefficient if they are now, and or you're going to end up in situations where people are using AI, but they're not using it in the way you want them to, or the way they should be. And what I mean by that is, in terms of potentially, misappropriating information or data, as we're alluding to here, or just not taking full advantage of what the AI capabilities are. So I think it's AI, unlike I think this is a true statement for any technology, but it's especially true for AI because it's so unproven, it's so new, it's still emerging. It requires really strong leadership to get an organization to adapt and adopt to this type of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. Super interesting. But I'm excited to switch from the newsworthy topics today into our guests today.
Yeah, we're going to have a group of guests here who I'll introduce here in just a moment, but we're going to have representative from a few different software vendors. We're going to have people from Oracle, NetSuite, Epicor, Priority Software, and then Infotech Research Group, which is an analyst firm. So we'll have 3 software vendors, an industry analyst, and myself having a discussion around ERP and AI in general, ERP trends, but heavy focus on AI in terms of what these software vendors are actually doing with AI, what some of your different options are with ERP and AI, and really just how to navigate that whole path towards digital transformation and AI in general. So we're going to get to that here in just a moment. And then later in the show, after the panel discussion, we'll also talk about 4 digital strategies that you should consider as part of your digital roadmap and really helping you define the pros and cons of each of those 4 major strategies and paths that you have when you're defining what your digital strategy is going to be. So we've got a lot more to cover. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola.
Hi, this is Eric Kimberling with Transformation Ground Control and also the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. And at Third Stage, we work with a lot of manufacturing companies, and we know that manufacturing companies are difficult to run. And the last thing you need is for your ERP system to make your jobs even more difficult. And if you follow me for any period of time, you know I like to talk about alternatives to some of the big ERP software providers because there's a lot of really good options out there in the marketplace. One of those options is CTech ERP, which is a practical all-in-one business system that's built specifically for manufacturers. And what's great about this is that it can be used out of the box to run and support any manufacturing company, but you can also tailor it to fit your way of doing business. It's web native and agile, so you can run your shop floor from a laptop, tablet, or phone. It's packed with important features like real-time traceability, scheduling, inventory control, quality management, a bunch of other features that are all ready to use from the time you choose the software. And if you need to change the software, the beauty is you can do it in a low-code, no-code environment. So there's no code required. You don't have to hire a developer to make changes to tailor the software to fit your manufacturing operations. Now, what I like about CTech ERP and vendors like this and systems like this is that it's really a disruption to what I consider a stagnant and bloated industry. There's a lot of really expensive ERP systems out there, and CTech is one that's more affordable. It's got transparent pricing, and you get a SaaS software solution for only $50 per user per month. So it's just good to know what you're going to pay for the software. There's not a lot of upfront cost, and you're just paying per user per month, only $50, which is really hard to find. And implementations typically happen pretty quickly. They happen in weeks, not months. And they have a fully dedicated support team to help you put out fires or help you get through the implementation more successfully. So CTech ERP is an ERP system that's built for proactive manufacturers who want to get things done. You can learn more by going to ctecherp.com, and that is spelled CETECERP.com. Hope this helps and hope you check them out. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control. My name is Eric Kimberling. This is the podcast that's tech agnostic, covers everything related to digital transformation, including people, process, technology, and strategy. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And the show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent and tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformations. If you'd like to learn more about digital transformations or about Third Stage Consulting in general, I've included our website information below, and also check the show notes below, the description field below, because we've got a lot of different resources that will help you in your digital transformation journey. So be sure to check that out. And one of the resources that'll be super helpful and relevant to this conversation that we're about to have is our guide to AI strategy and implementation. So if you're thinking about AI, we've been talking about AI a lot so far in this episode. We're going to continue talking about AI in this next panel discussion. But if you're looking for ideas on how to navigate this whole AI thing and how to define the right strategy that fits your business and figure out how to deploy AI in your business, you can read that tech agnostic and independent view that we've published. It's a guide to AI strategy. You can find that by scanning the QR code here on the screen. And I've also included links to that guide below, so be sure to check that out. So the reason I bring that up, the whole AI thing, is because we're going to talk about ERP and AI and trends in ERP and AI. This is sort of a midpoint review here at mid-2025 to see where we're at. It's sort of a state of the union with software vendors and where are they at in developing these AI capabilities and how are customers using AI. That's all amongst the things that we're going to talk about here in this panel discussion, who, by the way, this same panel is going to be part of our Digital Stratosphere conference. Digital Stratosphere, that's not how you say it, but Digital Stratosphere is the appropriate enunciation. Digital Stratosphere conference, which is late August 25th through the 27th, or is it 27th through 29th? Do I have those dates wrong? I think it's 27th through 29th.
The Stratosphere is 25 through 27.
Oh, okay. I was right the first time. So August 25th through the 27th. I will be there, despite the fact I don't know the dates. I will be there August 25th through the 27th in Denver. If you can't be there in Denver, Colorado, in the U.S., you can also join remotely. Go to stratosphere2025.com. You can get 20% off your registration fee if you use the code EARLYBIRD. So all that being said, these panelists are all going to be at Stratosphere. There's going to be other speakers that are not on this panel discussion here today, although next week, just stay tuned because we will have other speakers that aren't necessarily sponsors of the event, but these are just general speakers. They'll be on the show next week, so stick around for that. But this week, we're going to have some of the sponsors of Digital Stratosphere, representatives from, as I said, Oracle, NetSuite, Epicor, Priority Software, and Infotech Research Group. So with all that being said, let's jump in and introduce the panel.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today and have the opportunity to share with you what we are doing in Priority Software, the AI era. Priority Software is a leading ERP platform, and I'm focused on ERP platform. We have a lot to say about it. Some of you familiar with the composable ERP, the same idea of robust components and the functionality on top of that. And one of the major components that was lately added to those robust engine components is AI. And we just introduced the AI ERP. You probably can see some of the AI party merch that I have behind me. And the idea here is that AI is not just another feature of ERP, but it is something that injected into the system and change actually the full idea of what is an ERP.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today and joining all the way from Tel Aviv in Israel as well. So thank you for being here. And then Scott Bickley from Infotech. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. Scott Bickley. I'm an advisory fellow at Infotech Research Group. We're basically an IT research and advisory firm that helps IT leaders make strategic, well-informed decisions through our unbiased, actionable research. We help people basically systematically improve their IT processes and governance and alignment with the business. So our practice focuses on more the business side of IT, more around vendor management, contract review, and contract structures, as well as best practices around procurement for software and technology services. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for being here again, Scott. And then Craig from NetSuite, Oracle NetSuite.
Yeah, excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us on. I have a bit of background envy of Scott going on here right now, but we'll do our best without the beautiful background. Craig Sullivan of NetSuite. I'm the Group Vice President of product here, responsible for our optimized cash and profits value stream, which is, as many of you will probably be aware, sort of the heart of the business, the financial capabilities, spanning managing cash, financial reporting, managed tax, getting paid, making payments, etc., and representing NetSuite amongst the this lofty panel of colleagues in the industry. NetSuite is the first cloud ERP system. We've been delivering our solution cloud only for the last 26 years now, and also driving the driving the solution through to this new era of AI embedded and built into to business systems. So I'm delighted to join and get the opportunity to speak with you all.
Great. Thank you very much. And then Elliot from Epicor.
Thank you, Eric. Hello, everybody. I'm Elliot Zito. I'm with Epicor Software, one of the leading providers really within the manufacturing ERP space for not just ERP, but also ancillary tool sets that are being leveraged day in and day out. One in particular that we see as really the primary driving talking point for today is around AI. For those that do and or don't know much about Epicor, we are the longest standing manufacturing specific ERP that is known to exist. We were officially C Corp'd in 72. So I've brought with me an absolute phenomenal subject matter expert here at Connor Hyder, who I'll let introduce himself in a moment. But what we do want to talk about is how we're breaking the barriers of just a traditional ERP in that formal sense, right? ERP has evolved into more or less a
Oh, we lost him right at the punchline there, the headline of what he was going to say. So, and we lost Connor too. So let me let them both back in the room here. There we go.
I'm sorry about that. Do you have me?
Yep, you're back.
The glories of
discussions.
the glories of living in the country. Internet is a bit spotty. I don't know where you lost me. If you could.
Yeah, just at the I think it was just the last part you were saying, Epicor. You talked about how it's one of the original cloud manufacturing systems, and then you started to say Epicor is, and then we lost you.
Okay. In regards to that, what I was saying is that we take a very different approach from an ERP perspective. It's no longer just the traditional data source for your business. It's offering extensibility, flexibility with embedded tool sets that are native to Epicor Kinetic as a whole. Now with me is Connor Hyder, who has been at the forefront of this AI revolution, even before it really was almost an expectation, right? He's my trailblazer. He's got a ton of experience outside and inside of Epicor. And I think having that expertise really helps weigh in the gravitas of what we can deliver for all of our customers.
Great. And speaking of Connor, you're from Epicor as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Speaking of Connor speaking. Yeah. So I'm a solution engineer here at Epicor. And my role is really understanding client needs in alignment with capability and demonstrating that. So that could be anything from the full suite of ERP to even the tool set and how we can leverage that in creative ways, up to and including even our AI products like Prism agents that we also have. And, I appreciate you bringing us on here, and I'm excited to talk through some of the topics that we have today.
Absolutely. Yeah, great to have you all. And I always love getting a group of different vendors together because you don't see it very often. You don't see, kind of a peer discussion like this happening that often. So I always find it super fascinating just to hear the different perspectives of people that are in the forefront of developing the stuff that, we're out there talking about and implementing with our clients. Just to turn to the audience real quick before I get to my first couple questions here. Got a couple comments I want to get to. Chris on LinkedIn says, thanks, Eric, for arranging this. Hello from the UK. Mohammed and one or two other people said that we're not audible. We can hear each other, but hopefully you guys can all hear us. I think the audience can hear because they're responding to what I'm asking. So let me know if anyone's still having trouble hearing us at the moment. Mike joining us from LinkedIn in Houston, Texas, is looking to learn more about MCP and low-code platforms. So we'll be sure to get to that as we're getting into the questions here with the group here. And then a couple of people said the audio is now working. So hopefully you heard everything we were saying here. I also want to say hello to Sammy on YouTube, joining from Nairobi, Kenya, in the legal and professional services sector. And then we've already got a question here coming in from Chris on LinkedIn, who says, will ERP providers be bringing new versions of their platforms, which companies will have to upgrade to? So I guess we might as well rip the Band-Aid off. The question of upgrades, forced upgrades, all that stuff. This will be really interesting because, Craig you might have a different perspective than the others just because NetSuite is sort of native cloud. It's always been in the cloud. So it's maybe not quite the same for you guys, but maybe why don't we start with you, Craig, if you don't mind. And I hate to maybe put an unfair question on you because you guys don't really have upgrades per se, but what are your thoughts on, being a native SaaS and cloud solution? How do upgrades factor into your solution? And then I'll sort of ask the same of the other vendors as well.
Yeah, thanks. And it is a great question, and it's something that we at NetSuite, we're very, very proud of, having to figure out how to solve way back when, at the beginning of our journey, when this space that's become known as the cloud was still known to some as ASP, application service providers, and then SaaS, and only subsequently became termed the cloud as adoption grew. We realized very early on that one of the advantages of being in the cloud was that we were taking away some of the, or actually much of the hard work and effort that was required in maintaining physical software on servers that were running in the facilities of our target customers. And at that time, we were selling to relatively small businesses, and when they would come to us and ask us questions about security and availability and the kinds of systems and hardware that our application was running on, and they were talking to us in their office where their entire business data was sitting on an IBM or a Dell PC that was also there, where their coffee cup was resting underneath their desk. They were very concerned about what would happen with their data when they could no longer see the service. And so we went through that transformation, that education process, if you will, to help people understand that we're building for scale, we're building for handling thousands, tens of thousands of customers in our infrastructure, and that we were taking these responsibilities on. Turning to upgrades, then the notion of running in the cloud and of turning over those responsibilities to a cloud vendor also meant that we had to solve the upgrade problem. And I won't say that it was while I was around at the time, it was folks like Evan and other of the early team members that figured out exactly how to do that, and to make it a seamless process. So while we do quote unquote upgrade our product, we have twice yearly major releases and monthly minor releases. Those are by and large a seamless process for our customers. All of the configurations that our customers have in place, all of the extensions, particularly the extensions that are deployed by our Suite Cloud Developer Network partners that are deploying what we call Suite apps to either verticalize or extend horizontal capabilities. All of that becomes part of the implementation for our customers, and all of that is seamlessly quote unquote upgraded or supported and maintained across all of our releases multiple times a year. And so that's a responsibility that we took on, and we think and we believe, and as we still do, that is the responsibility of the software vendor. We shouldn't require that our customers have to figure out how to solve those problems, that they should feel confident with the way that they tailor, configure, and extend their solution. And we see that carrying forward as well. So this transition that's taking place, this transformation that's taking place with more AI being embedded in these solutions, for NetSuite customers, that's going to become seamlessly available to them. They're not going to to have to think about what it's going to take to migrate and reconfigure or re-implement. Those capabilities are being rolled out to them already and today, and will continue to do so. So it's a great question. It's something that's very important and a huge consideration for all businesses when they're deploying any business software, and critically for their ERP. And we take that responsibility very seriously.
Yeah. How about you, Connor? I want to get your perspective too, because unlike NetSuite, Epicor has sort of made that transition from on-premise provider to cloud provider. How does that look for your customers? When it comes to upgrades, in general?
Yeah, no, so it's a good question.
Well, Eric, if you wouldn't mind, maybe if
Epicor has put a down there.
Hey, Ellie, you were going to say something there?
I think our internet's a little choppy. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say in regards, and Connor, if you don't mind, maybe I'll kind of lead off with this, just from a migration standpoint. To Craig's comment, I can't summarize it much better than what he was saying from a NetSuite perspective, right? But I think the long pole in the tent is Epicor, being in the ERP space now for 53 years. We came up through that traditional deployment model of servers on site, everything deployed on premise. If you wanted to tunnel in, you had to go through the VPN network, things of that nature, right? But what we noticed around 2010, 2012 was this push for, and it seems dated now, but a multi-tenancy cloud deployment model. And one of our big pushes is obviously Epicor Kinetic as a whole is a cloud-first organization, completely rewritten 5 years ago. The deployment model is as clean as really I can see from a competitive perspective, but we have that fact of the matter of having a fairly large amount of existing customers that are still on premise, and some of them still love that. Now, we've never sunsetted a solution. However, what we've done is tailored a clean migration path for these customers to replicate even some of their own personalizations and or customizations that they did in the world of Vista and Vantage and 10 and Avante and all these legacy solutions. And we've designed and developed something called the Cirrus program, CIRRUS. And what we can do is really lift and shift and or just replicate their existing processes in place in the table structure that we know, right? We designed, we developed it, we still support it. But how can we tunnel them into Kinetic as cleanly as possible without a massive amount of disruption? And that's been in the queue now about 10 years, that initial program was kicked off. And it was really relegated just towards the historical, formerly known as Epicor 10 or Epicor 9 or Vista Vantage. You remember these names, Eric. But we've taken a broader stroke at this and have now really started to replicate into some of these legacy providers, or I should say platforms, to bring them into our flagship solution, which is Kinetic.
Yeah.
Can I add, please, to that bottom? Because we in Priority also a veteran product, tens of years in the market. It's true that on the last few years, most of our customers go directly to the public cloud, but we still have some of our customers in the on-prem version. I mentioned before the platform idea of the product, and the platform idea, this is the one that enable us to seamlessly migrate customers from the on-prem to the cloud. It's the same product, but because of the platform concept, we have different layers. So we rewrite. It's not really lift and shift because we need to change technologies. While we are moving from the on-prem to the cloud, we need to move to microservice. We need to break the monolith and some other technological stuff. But it's seamless to the customer. It's not like they have to do a new or to upgrade with a new project or deployment of ERP. It's the same project as is, just like a magic migrate to the cloud with their private customization. And if I will take it to the AI era, because we want to talk about AI, we must talk about AI. That's what we are doing all the day. I must say that you don't necessarily have to be on the cloud version to enjoy all those AI capabilities. You can enjoy it, of course, on the cloud first, because the technology and the platform enables that very easily. But when we're talking about hybrid models and we can have some AI services, the platform idea talking about openness and unlimited connectivity, so you can integrate those services to priority embedded AI services or to additional AI apps if you want. And it doesn't matter if you are on the on-prem platform or on the cloud platform. The idea is that you can enjoy new technologies such as AI in both situations.
Right. Yeah, that's well said, and I appreciate that different perspective there. Scott, speaking of different perspective, I want to ask you, Scott, about your perspective. I know you and I have been fairly vocal. Both of us have been fairly vocal about some of the forced upgrades that some vendors, no one that's here on the panel discussion here today, but there's been other vendors that are maybe a little more aggressive and inflexible in their upgrade strategies with their customers. What are your thoughts on this whole concept of upgrading cloud, and should we or shouldn't we upgrade to the cloud now? Should we stay on prem if the vendor still provides an on prem solution? Obviously, that doesn't apply to NetSuite because NetSuite is native in the cloud. But for these other vendors that are sort of have these hybrid models, how do customers navigate that decision or that path?
Yeah, thanks, Eric, and apologies for the background noise. I'm up here at a lake location, and it's a little bit backgroundy. Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're layering on now like multiple challenges. So there's been and will continue to be a major push for legacy software providers that maybe originated on premise to build out and migrate their customer bases to the cloud. And I think customers do need to understand that this is long term, not really going to be an option in perpetuity. As we've heard today, maybe some providers are going to provide a longer leash or runway for you to make that decision, but ultimately the CFOs are demanding a shift in those revenue models. So even if you do stay on premise, you're going to eventually probably move to subscription based licensing or something to that effect, and it's just because the economics demand it. At this point, at this stage, now you layer in AI functionality and capabilities, and it gets really interesting. It's like a patchwork quilt, or maybe a spectrum, where on the more aggressive side, you've got vendors that were already force migrating their customers to the cloud, really taking sometimes some predatory tactics to do so. If you want our solutions, you need to be on the most modern version in the cloud. Hey, we want to bring you across in a different way, and our version of what standardized looks like in our environment, not really taking into account what maybe your competitive differentiation dictates that you need to do from a customization or configuration perspective. Those words, kind of have become evil in the world of ERP, and there's a lot of good conversations you've hosted around that, Eric, on multiple platforms. But there's a lot of utility that comes from that in some instances as well. And then you kind of go all the way, you swing through that spectrum, you come to the other side, and you have, I think the cloud native providers do have a bit of an advantage, right? You don't have to migrate a legacy customer base to a new solution. Anytime you're going to do that migration, no matter how seamless you try to make it as a vendor, and I applaud efforts to do so and to give customers the time to make those decisions on their timeline, it's still a big expense, and there's going to be a lot of churn and a lot of change that comes with that. So if you're already cloud native and you're already on a cloud native platform, you've already probably adapted to how updates come in, how you test them, how you evaluate when you turn those features and those functions on. And it's just a natural state to layer in AI functionality. I think the interesting pieces is, what value is the AI functionality actually going to provide you at this point in time? I think the issue of migrating from, let's say, legacy on-prem to cloud is exponentially more important than what AI features am I going to be switching on and off today. And I'm sure we'll segue into what all of that entails, but there's a lot of cool stuff happening. But I look at the backdrop of investment and the extreme hype that is built up, and it kind of feels like the whole technology ecosystem has become a one-trick pony around AI.
Yeah, hold that thought. I want to come right back to the AI thread here in a minute. I knew we weren't going to be able to get too far into this without getting right into AI. So thanks for just ripping the Band-Aid off, Scott. So I want to say hello, first of all, to some team members here, or some audience members on the different channels here. Zoha's joining from Switzerland. Thank you for being here today, Zoha. We have Anthony joining on LinkedIn from Dubai, an Oracle ERP expert. And David is joining from Pennsylvania, and he loves Priority. So I don't know if you know Karen or if you know David, Karen, but there you go. And then we also have another fan, but this one of NetSuite. Pauline says go NetSuite. So figured you'd like that, Craig.
Thank you, Pauline.
So real quickly then, speaking of AI, let's talk about it. I mean, I want to start with you, Connor, since you're sort of the resident AI expert on the panel here, but Connor from Epicor, what are you guys seeing in terms of not only what you're developing on the AI perspective, because I think we all know you guys are spending, all of you vendors are spending a lot of R&D dollars on AI. And to Scott's point, there's a lot of AI options out there. Some of it's been taken advantage of. There's some good use cases out there for some of the AI capabilities, but some maybe not so much. So what's the difference between what you guys are seeing like on the front end development side of what's available versus what customers expect and what they're actually deploying?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways of looking at this. The first is what do customers expect? And I think that comes down to good use cases for AI where it actually works and functions and solves for problems in the business. The other side of it too is sometimes almost AI adjacent type solutions, right? How can we use AI to influence what the ERP is doing? Not that it necessarily has to be the solution itself, but it can help us leverage the AI tools even better. And so when we look at what we're doing at Epicor, we've got Prism, right? The primary agent that people are going to interact with. And we call them agents in terms of the different use cases that we solve for, but we house them all under one interface, right? So there's a lot of functionality that goes into that. On top of that, right, people are collecting data. There's another big thing that I think is still top of mind. Business intelligence is not going away, and all of that data is here to stay. And so for us, if you go back a couple of years, we acquired Grow, the business intelligence solution, and springboarded from that. And now we're moving forward with something called Grow Data Platform. So how do we take all of that intelligence that we're already trying to visualize and get in front of people and also get that in front of our AI so that people can leverage even more data, potentially not even inside the four walls of an ERP login. And then, I mentioned already, not quite novel, but I like to say that adjacency and compatibility. And so kind of even leading back on the previous question about upgrades and moving to the cloud, we have an implementation AI that can actually go and analyze things like customizations, because so many customers may actually forget what some of those things even did or the context for how they performed. But then another level is our AI can assist in actually helping move forward in the sense of leveraging the internal tool sets that we already have, right? We've got business activity queries built into the ERP. We've got application studio, so you can influence how the screens look, feel, and function. We have automation studio, so we can leverage AI even across multiple systems where and when we want to. So we want to give people a lot of flexibility to get things done that are important, but then also the tools so that they can add value themselves as well, so that they're not necessarily locked into just an Epicor solution. We provide really an entire ecosystem for people to operate in now.
Yeah. Yeah. How about you, Craig? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on not only what NetSuite is doing from an AI perspective, which I did have a chance, by the way, to interview Evan Goldberg, your founder, not too long ago about this, but I'm sure things have changed and evolved since then. But I guess more specifically, if where you guys are is up here, in terms of AI capabilities and enhancements and things you're building, where do the customers fall as far as what they can actually consume and how well they understand how they could be using AI? Because what we see is sort of a disconnect there. Vendors are way up here and customers are down here just trying to figure out what the hell AI is, while you guys are out on the forefront of the bleeding edge, just, finding all these different use cases or potential use cases. What do you see is there a gap there from your customer perspective, or how are you addressing that?
Yeah, it's a that is actually perhaps the billion, trillion, whatever dollar question related to this transformation that's taking place right now, is the the vision that customers have, and the I guess the the dreams or the aspirations that they have for what AI can do for their business and for them, is ahead of what they're comfortable actually today doing with AI. And their experiences mostly are from the consumer-based solutions, the Chat GPTs of the world, and everyone reads the stories about the hallucination phenomenon, and from an ERP system perspective, and particularly from the financials perspective, hallucinations are not acceptable. You have to have accurate numbers, and you have to be able to to sign your name to those, and ensure that that you're reporting accurately as part of your fiduciary duty if you're a CFO. And so there is that gap in terms of the adoption. There's a lot of interest, a lot of aspiration to adopt, but there is still that trepidation. We're at the very beginning of this journey, and what's really interesting about this journey, and it's not unlike the journey to the cloud 25 years ago, except that it's massively accelerated. And the rate of change of this technology is, I mean, just last week there was a huge leap forward in LLM, capabilities and technology with a very well-known company, making very, very bold claims about how big their leap was. The reality is that that's happening all the time, and the capability that we're seeing these solutions develop is ahead of what our customers are able to consume in terms of thinking about how it will help them transform their business. And so what we're doing is sort of providing, if you will, a point of view, a perspective on how those technologies can benefit business, how it can be used to accelerate decision making through incredible insights, just as was mentioned a few moments ago by Connor, and what it can do to help with more efficient business process and the execution of business process in the interest of servicing and better servicing our customers. And so we're deploying LLM technology within the suite, so that you can interact directly with the suite, communicate, collaborate with the suite through generative AI, use these tools to identify and present narrative insights. That's another part of this, is making it easier to consume everything that's going on in the business with natural language communication and explanations of what the data might be, and the proposal and recommendations on what to do about what's going on in the business. And so as we're introducing these things, we're seeing what customers naturally gravitate towards in terms of how they're where they're comfortable adopting those things, and we're working with them to get that feedback and to evolve those solutions. And then we're also putting things in place in other areas to see how that that may be responded to as well. But our key approach with this is maintaining the human in the loop. The system, the AI, is not making decisions for you right now. It's sharing insight. It's providing information to help the human make better decisions. And even in this world of agentic capabilities and asking the system to go off and take actions, again, particularly in the finance function, particularly in the back office parts of the organization, people still want to be sure that they're making the decisions and that they're calling the shots. So we don't see that changing for quite a while, perhaps if ever. But the nature of the decisions, and perhaps the leveling up of those decisions, the abstraction of those decisions, we expect to evolve over time as the solutions get better and people get more comfortable.
We're here with an industry panel talking about ERP and AI and other trends in the enterprise tech space. We've got a lot more to cover, but first we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Grok.
My name is Eric Kimberling, and I'm the CEO and founder of Third Stage Consulting. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to invite you to learn a little bit more about Third Stage Consulting, who we are and what we do. I've included a link to a video right here that describes Third Stage in a bit more detail. It talks about our story, our history, our philosophy, our clients, our service offerings, and that sort of thing. But in general, what Third Stage Consulting does is we're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting provider. We help clients through their entire digital transformation life cycles, beginning with digital strategy, software evaluation and selection, all the way through and including implementation planning, implementation readiness, and the actual implementation itself. We're technology agnostic, so we only represent our clients' best interests. We do not represent software vendors. But having said that, we work very closely with software vendors, all the leading players that you can imagine we've worked with, both in helping clients evaluate and select them, but also in helping clients implement those solutions as well. So we have a very broad, objective, agnostic view of the market that is meant to really represent your interest as you go through your digital transformation. I also encourage you to scan this QR code right here to get access to our resource center. This resource center has a ton of information, a ton of ebooks that are free. You have access to top 10 software rankings, playbooks for how to make your project more successful, guides to change management, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff that are going to help you through your digital transformation. So I encourage you to scan this QR code to get access to those resources. And please feel free to reach out to me directly to brainstorm ideas about your project. Even if it's just informally, you want to bounce around some ideas and get some informal advice, I'd be happy to spend some time with you. So feel free to reach out to me. I've included my contact information below. You can also find it in the description field of this video as well.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Transformation Ground Control episode number 231. My name is Eric Kimberling here at Darian Chwialkowski. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday at transformationgroundcontrol.com. And this is the podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation, the tech agnostic view of people, process, technology, and strategy. And we're here having a panel discussion amongst several different software vendors talking about ERP, AI, and other trends in the enterprise tech space.
May as well, because I think a component of your question is, right, the companies like us, Epicor, and everyone else here that's joining us and pioneering this, we're developing at a rapid pace, but our customers might be more timid in terms of taking that leap. And I appreciate you actually bringing that up and bringing that to light. And I think there's a couple components that happen with that. One is just accessibility of systems in general. If you take AI out of the conversation, ERPs can still be something that are difficult to use depending on the type of user that's interfacing. And so, at least from our perspective, right, Epicor is supported in many languages and used in many languages throughout the world. We've done things like make sure that natural language queries, they don't just work in English, they work in many different languages as well to make it more accessible. And for us, making sure that we train on particular system context so that people can ask questions in a way that feels natural to them without necessarily having to have like the Epicor semantics, if you will, to get the right answer is also helpful. And then just one final little thing too, I think sometimes people, they don't want to necessarily, trust, is this AI, is it going to protect my data? Is it working for me? So I think it's important, right? And Epicor is doing this, and I know other companies are on this track as well, right? We're building our Prism model from the ground up to actually respect things like user role-based access control, what data they should have access to, right? There's an orchestration layer that is model agnostic in the way that we answer questions. So we protect the data and deliver results at the same time in a secure manner for those users as well. And we're going to build from that foundation to add more and more benefit to it over time.
Yeah.
I think that on the one hand, the customers want AI. Organizations understand they have no other choice, like cloud a few years ago, but they need to have AI. But on the other hand, they are terrified from AI. Terrified from the trust perspective that you just mentioned, that a machine will take some decision for them. Terrified from the fact that maybe for some of the employees it will replace me in my job. There are a lot of anxiety around AI, and when I'm looking at what we are doing in priority, we're talking about the assistant, the one that everybody is much familiar and feel comfortable with it because it's like the ChatGPTs and all it. I can control what is going on there. It's just like a user experience, less UI, more AI. Just talk with the system in your NLP and it will work for you. So you don't need to navigate into that complex ERP, and you don't have to learn the UI, and you don't have to remember where to do, what to do, how to do. You just need to go to that chat and ask the system to work for you like the chat ERP. And I think that's the more thing that our customers adopt. When it comes to the advisor part, you must keep the human in the loop, as you already said, because they do not trust, and they're right, they should not trust the machine for taking decisions for them. They need some recommendations or insight, or we're talking now about descriptive analytics. The AI can take all those reports from the ERP and just describe it with words or with chart, but then you can control and review and decide what to do with it. So it's like an assistant, and the advisor part must keep the human in the loop.
Yeah, that's well said. And I want to actually build on something you just said, Karen, and pull in a couple comments here from the audience. And I'm going to ask you a question related to this, Scott, more from I guess, a customer perspective, an ERP customer perspective. But the two comments I want to get to, Chris on LinkedIn says companies and users of ERP systems are trying to understand that AI is good. They know they can make use of it, but they need some guidance on where they're really going to add value from their current system. So that's one comment. And then the follow-up here, the other comment I want to get to is from Carrie on LinkedIn. Carrie says, I think customers want also from vendors on AI as the real conversation and lessons learned on data needing to be clean and managing organizational change management. There's leadership and communications to calm those who think their job will be replaced by it. So I guess I want to shift to you, Scott, and sort of get that customer perspective, because you guys as analysts, you work with tons of different customers that are thinking about AI, they're thinking about cloud, they're thinking about all kinds of stuff related to enterprise technology. But how do you see customers adapting? I mean, what's your view from the front line of how customers are actually adapting or responding to AI?
Yeah, I think there's a few points to make on this one. Here, one that probably is not really thought about or talked about a whole lot is the whole contractual aspect of AI. And as vendors, you're layering in, maybe on an ERP, from an ERP perspective, these features just show up one day. Other times I have to elect to go out and buy a solution, a point-to-point solution, or maybe I'm building my own model and building my own solution. Either way, no matter what, my colleague Phil Bodie, a principal research director here, we've got a pretty extensive vendor insight note coming out around these contractual aspects that you have to consider. How do you get organized around your organization just to think about AI, and what are the risks and risk levels that you're willing to take on across different domain functions, across different legal functions, liability functions? What happens? I read some terms from a vendor the other day for their chatbot that says, hey, if you upload anything that results in a claim on us from a third party around any type of infringement, you will indemnify us completely. That's just for the claim, right? That doesn't even mean anything was proven. So now how do I go out with a company of 10,000 people and make sure that all of them are not able to put in some type of infringing content into this Gen AI interface that automatically puts the company at a point of liability, right? So there's 3 dozen examples like that. So if you're not looking at contracts, if you're not talking to people that are going to start informing you of the questions you should be asking yourselves and your colleagues, and really examining within your industry and the questions to be asking your vendors. That's one point. Looking at things more from a functionality perspective, which I think where this was kind of coming from initially, I think we are definitely seeing that, we know most organizations are struggling with data governance, data management, data quality. That is a core requirement for any AI solution to have a chance to give you accurate results on a regular and reliable basis. That is going to require organizational change management. That is going to require you to do some things differently. You might need to say, wait, we've got 6 months of work to do over here in this area to get our data set up before we can really take advantage of certain solutions that are in the marketplace. I think even at that point, you've cleaned up your data, you have curated data, you've enacted maybe fine tuning and RAG and all of these different tools to try to really narrow down the results you get to make it as accurate and reliable as possible. There's still things that are going to potentially go awry, and that's where the human in the loop definitely comes into play. I think from my perspective, it's probably more reliable if I'm looking at getting some feature functionality from an existing vendor, like one of my ERP solutions, because the ERP provider is looking across a data set across thousands and thousands of customers. They understand what their modules are trying to do within a specific feature, and they're able to really train and test against that feature and come up with what should be demonstrable to the client or to the customer, a really reliable value-added feature. And I think some folks on this call have made the point, this is not necessarily going to be earth-shattering, but it should enhance what you're doing today. It should add value. And that is, to me, where the realm of possibility day, as opposed to the headlines that I read where, hey, we've created this model and our developers are 30% more efficient. No, they're not, and you go out and look at the data, first off, a developer only spends 25% of their time writing code. So there's no way you're 30% more effective through a code assistant, even though that's one of the leading use cases. I started reading some data this weekend where when you take a complex code base, a heavyweight code base, and you put real developers on it using these tools, and you actually measure them, they took 19% longer to finish their tasks. They didn't have any efficiencies at all. That led me to then say, and to ironically use AI to debunk AI. I go out and use ChatGPT Pro to say, show me studies where these code assistants have been used and what were the results. And it's interesting. It shows you these studies that are pretty simplistic, pretty easy use cases, things that demonstrate results, but all you see on the headline is 30% productivity increase. So do yourself a favor, look beneath the headlines, talk to your vendors, start developing relation paths with your vendors, and start having these conversations with multiple stakeholders across your organization, not just the business side, but the technology side as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's well said. And it's, every business, every organization is going to have different use cases that mean more to them, or they're going to have more business value than others. And so I think that's a key part of it too, is the better you understand yourself and your self-awareness of what we're good at, where the inefficiencies are and the opportunities really are for AI in our organization, which might look different from, the guy or gal next door. So I think that's the key thing, is really understanding where you think you can get value out of AI. Because I think, these guys, and I want to speak for all of you, the vendors in general, but you guys are investing a lot of money and time in AI capabilities. And so chances are pretty high there's a tool out there that these vendors are providing that can help you. It's just a matter of, is it right for you? Is it a distraction? Is it actually delivering value? Focus on those things that are really giving you value.
That point, Eric, and just one more thing, and I'll let everyone else talk. But I think that point around investment, that's key. That's one of my big things, right? I started looking at this in terms of scale just the other day, and I went back to kind of the PC era. And if you look at where things were kind of evolving, as PCs matured, development was maybe in the hundreds of millions of dollars a year in terms of investment. You move to the smartphone era, you get to like the tens of billions of dollars a year. You're now talking about hundreds of billions of dollars a year in a compressed time frame. Now we're starting to hear trillions of dollars. Okay. If you think there's not going to be pressure to have a return on that investment, or that money can continue to be invested at this scale indefinitely, you're sadly mistaken. And so that is why we're starting to see this disparity in this scale across vendors. Some are taking a kind of gentler approach, saying we have to own this investment cost right now. We don't have the value to go out and recoup those dollars. Others are saying, pay me now, pay me large. And, you have to separate the wheat from the chaff from that, because that's the real problem today. And it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to follow up. I'll start with you on this one. Craig, if you don't mind, from NetSuite. But this is from VJ on LinkedIn, says, how can you alleviate the concerns regarding security and data protection that are causing companies to hesitate in adopting AI technology? So back to the point we were just talking about around, I think, Scott, you were talking about the contractual side of things, where some vendors are saying, hey, if there's a breach or there's some misappropriation of information, we're not liable for it, and you're going to hold us not responsible. What's your view on this? I mean, how can customers be comfortable that their data is secure, not just with AI, but in their ERP systems in general?
Yeah, I think I mean, all these questions are really great, and this is an important question, whether with AI or not. What is the tech stack? What versions of software is being deployed? Who has those contracts? What responsibilities are being taken by which vendor, etc. NetSuite, I guess we have an advantage in some ways. We've always been a single system, and for the last approaching 10 years now, we've been part of the Oracle organization, which provides very, very deep, very, very rich, very, very secure, very scalable infrastructure. We rely very heavily on those investments, as I know many other vendors do. For us, we're leveraging the AI infrastructure that Oracle provides, and ensuring that in the context of security, the data is going into Oracle and it's staying in Oracle. We're leveraging the Oracle generative AI services. It doesn't go without the user's knowledge anywhere beyond that infrastructure. So from that perspective, it's a closed loop. That's not to say, and this is true in business just as it is in life, that someone if they have the appropriate privileges on their desktop, that they can't go and ask ChatGPT a question directly from their browser. But our system is not doing that without the knowledge of the administration functions and the implementation. Within that, and again, I do think that we sort of as an industry, we're sort of labeling everything with AI, and then it's perceived that is every aspect of that is different than what's gone before. If you think about AI as potentially another user in your system, then of course you have to think about what roles, what permissions, what privileges you're going to provide that user. What can they have access to? Can they read? Can they edit? Can they export, etc. It's very important that just as we are, that as vendors, we make those decisions transparent, and that they're in the hands of the administrative function of our customers, and that it's done under deep consideration in terms of what are the outcomes that you're looking for. Again, just as you would, you're not going to give a junior member of an organization the same access, the same privileges as a more senior member of the organization. Those things need to be thought about. And then from within that perspective, now you've got AI agents, etc., operating within the constraints that you've provided, and now you're thinking about what value add should we be looking for from those capabilities. This isn't magic. It looks like magic to end users often, in terms of just how did it figure out the answers to these questions, but it is a very, very advanced tool set, and it needs to be leveraged with forethought, and with an understanding of what it can do for you, and make sure it's deployed within the confines of the system. The last thing I'll say before I hand it over, because I know others want to talk about this, we definitely believe that the best AI is based upon the best data, and the majority of our customers' data, not all of it, but a large amount of our customers' data, in our case, exists within the suite. And so, we have, if you will, quite a lot of capability in terms of controlling, what can be accessed within that context, and then leveraging, MCP server, based technologies, the ability to connect and communicate with other systems, just as, in the past, SOAP-based RESTful, interfaces and API technology, leveraging into integrations with other systems. All of that, requires an understanding of the context, the semantics, as Connor mentioned earlier on, of what that data means in order for the AI to utilize it and make the best use of it in the context of what the business is looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And Makagogi, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, on LinkedIn, says, "Hi, I'm Mo. I'm a project manager and organizational design consultant based in Botswana. Looking forward to exchanging on how lack of data sanitization, flawed processes, and bypassing ethical functions can be navigated to avoid cognitive bias and uninformed decisions." So just wanted to bring up that comment because it's very relevant to what you were just saying, Craig, and what others have been saying as well.
Absolutely.
I want to shift gears a little bit, Karen, and ask you a sort of an unrelated question, somewhat related, but a little bit different. Contrasting Priority Software and your strategy to NetSuite. I think you're sort of on two different sides of a continuum or spectrum here. You've got NetSuite that's more the, the single platform SaaS multi-tenant pioneer, from 25 years ago, built in the cloud. And then Priority has taken a different approach, though. You have not historically been a one solution type of company. You've got multiple solutions for different industries and whatnot. How do you think this whole, how do you see this evolving in terms of standard single public cloud solutions versus industry specific solutions? How do you think that's going to unfold in the coming years?
So it's true that we have different line of businesses. Some of them are not only for the ERP arena, but for specific verticals such as retail, hospitality, education, and ERP is like the general platform that is relevant for everyone. We do believe that shortcut for best of breed, it's really it's really good idea, because you are coming with the best practice, and the onboarding is easier, and you have the benchmark from other organization, and you have specific functionality that are relevant to specific industry. Sometimes you have specific mobile apps or even specific procedures, but it's not instead of the platform strategy. All of Priority products, it doesn't matter which line of business or which industry we are looking at, are based on the platform strategy. Means that the best of breed will be the entry level, but from there you can take the platform and change it or configure it to your business needs, so you will be able to scale it or to change your business model with it. More than that, we sometimes have customers, like a group of companies with different industries. It can happen, and they're working on the same platform. So best of breed or best practices are very good for the short term, for the easy onboarding, and so on, for easy deployment, to shorten the deployment process. But it's not like a limited, tailored solution for that specific industry. It is still a platform, and organization and our integrators can configure and develop and customize it based on all the platform capabilities. It's still flexible, it's still open, and again, it still have all the other experience and AI features. And I mentioned it before, it's when I'm saying feature in our platform strategy is not like a coded hard-coded feature. Its usual will be a tool as part of our platform, a low-code or a no-code or a pro-code tool that we can enhance and expand the solution, although the entry point was best of breed.
Right. No, that's well said. And I want to come back to you, actually, Elliot, and I'll start with you on this question. I want to ask everyone sort of a capstone question. Before I get to you, Elliot, though, one other thing I want to point out again, everyone here on this call is part of our Digital Stratosphere event that's coming up late August 27 to 29. It's in person in Denver, or you can join virtually. Scan the QR code right here if you want to learn more about it, see what the pricing looks like. And if you use the word, I'll drop this in the chat, but if you use the discount code EARLYBIRD, you'll get 20% off the cost of the pass. So I'll leave this QR code here, scan it. If you decide you want to register, just use the word EARLYBIRD as the discount code, and you'll get 20% off. So I'll leave that up there. But in the meantime, Craig, I want to ask you, or I'm sorry, Elliot, I want to ask you a question to get started here on this. But that is, if you could give one piece of advice to an executive who's evaluating ERP options, what would it be? I'm going to come around and ask all of you that question too.
That's a great question. I think an executive oftentimes gets inundated with the concept that this is purely a technical decision or a technical transformation. And oftentimes when we go into these kind of pre-planning workshops of what to expect for said CEO, COO, CFO, it's a lot more than just overhauling your technical platform. This is an opportunity to really revamp, coordinate, and organize your business processes and your operational processes in place to make this ERP rollout as cleanly as possible. They are disruptive. We can all agree on that, right? But it is a chance and an opportunity for these organizations, whether big or small, to really fine tune and tailor this rollout to work with them and be able to augment all of their nuanced needs that make them who they are and make them competitive in their landscape, right? We don't want to break those down. We don't want to dismantle their complexities. I shouldn't even really use that word, but their approach to certain processes in place need to be encapsulated into said ERP rollout. And that is one of the things that we like to bring to light as soon as possible. Yes, it's new technology. We get that. We're excited that you're ready to go down this journey with any of us out here. But we need to peel back the onion a little bit and appreciate the concept of this is change management that's going to occur. And this is really a great time to increase or at least optimize the velocity of incorporating all of these complexities.
Yeah,
I completely, if I may, I completely agree with that. One of the things that I think many customers have perhaps not taken advantage of is sort of this notion of, if you're going to buy a new system, you should probably be taking best advantage of that. Just doing what you've already been doing with whatever systems that you were using up until this point, and then moving that into the new system that you've spent a lot of money on is not going to get you the outcomes that you actually were looking to achieve with this process in the first place. We have a methodology which we call Suite Success that follows exactly that model. We work with prospects and then customers to understand what they need, map that to how NetSuite's processes support those needs, and use that as the starting point to get them rapidly to achieving value in the cloud on the suite, so to speak. And then from there, let's talk about what's the configuration or customization that's unique to your business, and how do we evolve the implementation to give you even more value. But starting from the perspective of you're moving to NetSuite in our case. NetSuite has some ways of doing that. They've been tried and tested with 42,000 and counting customers, many of them in your micro vertical or vertical. Have an open mind to how that system, our system, has been designed to help businesses just like yours, and that's the change management piece is very often the hardest part of any ERP and business system implementation. And for those that are listening that are thinking about going through this process, that is the lion's share of the success. There is being open to to thinking about how to benefit from the new system that you're purchasing.
Yeah, well said.
I
How
will
about
add
you,
to
Karen?
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I will add to that when an organization wants to choose or need to choose a new ERP system, it's better that it will be a flexible and open one, and a system that will support him not only on the existing current processes, but on the future, on to more business processes that we do not know yet what are they, but that's the whole idea. Because we are living in an ever-changing reality, and when you choose a system today by functionality, it's not necessarily the one that you will need tomorrow. So choose a flexible one that will be able to grow with you and to adapt to your business needs.
Yeah, well said. How about you, Scott? What advice do you have from a vendor agnostic perspective on how executives should evaluate ERP options and move forward?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, define what ERP means for your organization. Is this just a system of record or back office functionality, or are you looking at a solution to run your business end to end? If you're going to be looking at, more of a, best of breed approach or something like that, you need to keep in mind data flows, ingress and egress. I'm starting to see what I'm calling the data wars emerge now that AI is taking front and center. You've got a big focus and need, as we talked about, on having good data. Now it's become even a more valuable asset, and some of the vendors are starting to wall off systems. So you need to look at vertical specific functionality. Do you have things in your industry that require some special feature functionality that you're maybe not going to get from a more vanilla solution? And then I think rounding it out is really thinking about your approach. Who are you at your core of an organization? Are you a developer organization? Are you highly technical, or are you more needing something out of the box, something that you can configure in a more maintainable manner? So it's all about, really, to me, knowing who you are first, then taking that and going out to the marketplace and saying, okay, which vendors kind of fit this profile, as opposed to just starting to speak to vendors in the marketplace. I know I'm human like everyone else, and might meet some of the people on this call and develop a nice rapport, and all of a sudden, these solutions seem great, but I didn't do the homework. I really understand what my needs are. What are we looking to do as an organization? And then I think final point is look at least 15 years ahead as much as you can. These are solutions that you don't really want to be trying to buy and implement more than once in a generation if you can avoid it.
Yeah,
I appreciate that point about looking ahead. And so, I spent the majority of my career, about 15 years, is on the IT side, implementing. So I understand where a lot of folks are coming from this. But I think, for that advice to an executive evaluating ERP, I would actually go to completely non-technical to some degree, right? Features, functions, all of those things are nice, but boy, across all the different projects that I've done, there's really two standout things. One of them is select for your top business drivers. And that plays into looking at your roadmap 5, 10, 15 years out. But the other, I think, really big component, because I've had things go very well in my career and I've had some projects not, and that happens. But it's selecting for a company that you feel like is going to make a good partner. Because the software is there for 15 years, but so is the vendor and the support and the level of interaction and interfacing that you're going to do over time to enhance that, to upgrade it, to make it do things right, new, different, or the way that you want to. So those are two, I think, really big things.
All right. Thank you very much. That was a great discussion. I appreciate the audience insights as well, the great audience questions and contributions, and certainly appreciate the panel being here today. And again, you can learn more from this same group of people as well as several others that will be speaking at and participating in our Digital Stratosphere Conference, August 25th through the 27th. It's in Denver, Colorado. You can also join remotely, virtually. So either way, you can go to stratosphere2025.com to learn more, to see the speaker lineup, and use the discount code EARLYBIRD to get 20% off those tickets. So we've got a lot more to cover. We're going to debrief on the discussion we just had with the ERP vendors. And then we're also going to talk about 4 digital strategies you need to know and consider, and what the pros and cons of those 4 digital strategy options are. We're going to get to that as well later in the show. But first, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Just tell me what you've got to say to me. I've been waiting for so long to hear the truth.
I want to invite you to join me and other thought leaders in the digital transformation space to Stratosphere 2025. It's an annual conference we've hosted now for 7 years in a row. It's a great event. It's live in Denver, Colorado, but we're also offering it virtually via hybrid tickets. And we're going to have a lot of different speakers here, including myself as a keynote, as well as others that you may know from the industry. And this is a perfect conference if you're interested in any sort of digital transformation, including ERP and CRM and HCM. And actually, the theme for this year's session is AI, and how AI is affecting all different types of digital transformation. But in addition to AI, we'll also talk about the fundamentals of digital transformation, including program management, evaluating the right software, digital strategy, change management, process improvement, all the things you need to know to make your project successful. It's also a great way to network and learn from others. So just being part of a community that is also like-minded and going through the same things you are, that's another value. And you can join, like I said, remotely, in person, and you can also buy VIP tickets if you'd like more exclusive access to me and others from the Third Stage team and other speakers that are going to be there. So I hope to see you soon. Check out my discount code below for discounted tickets. You can go to stratosphere2025.com for more information, including the full agenda, and I hope to see you there.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So, collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 231. My name is Eric Kimberling, the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent and tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformation journeys. And this podcast is the tech-agnostic and independent view of digital transformation, including people, process, technology, and strategy. So we just had the ERP vendors on the show, Darian, talking about some of the trends in the space, including a lot about AI. What were some of your thoughts and takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, it was super interesting to see the different perspectives from each of the vendors, for sure. I think it's always interesting whenever we get them all together in a conversation to hear the different perspectives of what each company has going on and what their take is on it. Well, some is similar, some is different. So interesting to see that. But I do have a couple follow-up questions for you, Eric, that really sparked from this conversation for me. The first one being, are your ERP contracts protecting you from AI-related liability, or is it more so exposing you to it? I know we talked a lot about AI with the vendors, so more so on the contract side now. How will this affect companies?
Yeah, and to be totally candid, one of the panelists, one of the sponsors of the event, and panelists that we wanted to have on this session was Marcus Harris with Taft Law, and he will still be at Stratosphere, but he was on vacation this week and could not join us remotely, where he was in a remote location without cell phone access, so he wasn't able to join this panel. But the reason I bring him up is he's a great person to talk about the contractual side of things. But Scott from Infotech did talk a little bit about that, about how he's seeing clauses in contracts where the vendors are basically getting a release of liability from their customers if there were to be some sort of issue with the data being appropriated or misappropriated in the ERP system or with AI in a way that creates any sort of harm or claim. So I think that's a real issue that needs to be sorted through. I mean, I think that's a clause that creates the exact problem you're asking about, or you're asking how do companies avoid it. I think the first thing is if you can negotiate your way out of that sort of contractual clause, that's one way. But if you're a smaller or mid-sized company going up against Oracle or SAP or some big software vendor, it might be a little more difficult to negotiate that. So that's where, having someone like a Marcus or a Scott, who's an independent industry analyst, ourselves at Third Stage, we help clients negotiate contracts all the time. So having someone that's independent, not affiliated with the software vendors, and someone who knows the space really well can help you through that process. So I'd highly recommend bringing in one of us to help you with that process. That'd be the first thing. Secondly, if you can negotiate that stuff away, that's the way to do it. But I think these software vendors are getting pretty savvy about protecting themselves and the potential claims that might come out of this in the future, which is a really big deal because I think the courts throughout the world have yet to really sort through a lot of these issues that are inevitably going to come from these AI models, especially the more open AI models that are, pulling in data from multiple sources and making it more public facing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more question to go with this is, do your admins treat AI like a user? And what does that look like? Roles, permission, audibility, all those different things.
Well, software vendors are starting to treat AI bots and agents as users, partially because they can charge more money for it. So that's where you have to be careful. I mean, AI stuff's really cool, but it can rack up pretty significant annual fees if you embed all these AI agents throughout your organization. All of a sudden, you've got all these extra users you may not have even known about. So putting the right parameters and controls and governance in place to make sure you've got visibility into that, not only for cost reasons, but also for some of the privacy and data security, legal liability, contractual type reasons we just talked about. So it's a good thing for vendors because they've just discovered a new cash cow or a new revenue stream for their cloud solutions, which are already profitable as it is. And now you're adding AI agents to the mix. So it's a good point, something that you definitely need to be aware of when you're implementing any sort of enterprise tech with AI agents or chatbots built within it.
Yeah, absolutely. But what a great conversation today. It was great to have everybody all together, and Stratosphere will be even better then.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And this was just a partial representation of some of the speakers. Next week, we'll have additional speakers from Stratosphere, a whole new panel that'll be on next week's show. So if you like that one, you'll like the ones next week, because actually the ones next week are all non-vendors. So it's going to be all just general agnostic speakers talking about change management and strategy and all kinds of stuff. So that'll be a fun one as well. So be sure to check out episode 232 coming up next week. But we've got one last segment we want to get to here before we wrap up, and that is 4 digital strategies and the pros and cons of each of those digital strategies that you need to consider as part of your digital transformation. When we're helping clients through their digital strategy and road mapping, a lot of times they get overwhelmed with all the different options. You've got, off-the-shelf ERP, SaaS solutions, you've got platforms, you've got custom developed solutions, you've got interoperability, best of breed integrated solutions. You've got all these different paths you could go down. But the reality is that most of the paths don't make sense for a lot of organizations. I mean, every organization is going to end up with a different prioritization, but it doesn't make sense to explore all these different paths necessarily. And so what I want to do in this next segment is share with you a framework for how you can define which of these 4 general strategies make the most sense so that you can hone in and really focus on the one or the ones or the options that make the most sense for you and exclude the ones that don't make sense. And this is a really tech agnostic view of how to assess these frameworks. I'm not coming in with a preconceived idea of which one is best, but what I am going to do is share what the pros and cons are and what the risks are of each of those 4 strategies, because each one has its own strengths, but it also has a dark side. So I'm going to share with you the pros and the cons of each one so that ultimately you can say, hey, this 1 or 2 options are the ones that make the most sense for our organization. So let's go down that path and really focus our planning efforts there. So I'm going to play you this clip from our YouTube channel, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
The first option you have as an organization, and this has historically been the most common option for organizations, is to select a single ERP system that's going to address the needs of your entire organization. Now, the main advantage of single ERP system is, first of all, it's integrated end-to-end processes. And what this means is you don't need to have different technologies to address different departments or different locations or different workflows within your organization. And that's one of the big reasons why organizations are so enamored by single ERP systems, is they think that one system can house all of their business processes and house all the technology they need for their enterprise technology needs. Somewhat related to that is another advantage, and that is you have one system, and that's a single source of truth. So not only are your processes and your technologies integrated, but now all the information that is housed within your organization is contained in this one system. So now you don't need to worry about going to multiple systems and getting different answers for the same question, or you don't need to go to multiple systems to get an answer or do an analysis that requires multiple data sets. Now, in theory, you should be able to go to one single ERP system that gives you the single source of truth that you need as it relates to your business operations. So these are 2 of the major advantages, but the disadvantages are just as important to understand as well. The first one is that ERP systems can be very expensive. And you might argue, well, ERP systems aren't any more expensive, or maybe they're even less expensive than some of the other 3 options we'll talk about. And that may or may not be true. More often than not, ERP systems are a lot more expensive than organizations think. And the reason for that is a couple-fold. One is ERP systems are end-to-end business processes. They're single systems that automate your entire business, and that means that's a lot of software. That's a big investment in not only the software itself, but more importantly, it's a big investment in changing all those processes, all those people, converting all that data that you might have had in place for decades or even longer. The other big expense that comes with ERP systems that is often under-realized and underrated is that the operational disruption caused by putting in a single ERP system is very disruptive. If you think about it, you're ripping out the guts of your organization and you're replacing it with another system. And that means you're putting the entire organization at risk, not just one subset of the organization, but the entire thing. So that expense is a real thing that you really need to make sure you understand. The other consideration is that ERP systems are risky. That's somewhat similar to the point I just made in terms of it being expensive. It's also risky because now you run the risk of having a material operational disruption at the time you're flipping the switch from your old technology or technologies to a single ERP system. And again, the reason for that is because now that you've integrated all of your business processes and your data and your workflows into one system, just one break or one problem in the implementation or in the workflows can have a domino effect and affect your entire operations. We see a lot of organizations that tried to implement ERP systems ineffectively, and they ran into so many problems that they couldn't ship product, they couldn't close the books, they couldn't run payroll. Major operational disruptions like that can be very expensive and very risky, and a lot of organizations simply can't or don't want to take that risk, understandably so. So it's important to understand that there are benefits to ERP systems, but there's also downside risks as well. And now we'll get into the other 3 options you have as well. Another option that organizations have is best-of-breed technologies. And best-of-breed is similar to ERP, but a little bit different. It's a lot like ERP in that you're addressing your end-to-end business processes, but it's different in that you're not necessarily doing it with one single system. So in other words, instead of having one ERP system that will handle order processing and forecasting and financials and accounting, manufacturing, warehouse management, payroll, etc., now you have different systems to address different needs. So you might have, instead of just one big system, you might have multiple systems that do different things that are all integrated together to provide that end-to-end solution that you might also get out of an ERP system. Now, when I first say that, it may sound like best of breed is not nearly as appealing as single ERP, but if you look at the pros and cons, it can actually be very appealing. The first reason why it's appealing to organizations is because it allows you to find the software that's the best fit for different parts of your organization. Many cases, organizations that are implementing a single ERP system find that this system can't address all or even most of their needs, and they end up with big gaps and big deficiencies in what the ERP system gives them, and they end up settling or compromising in certain parts of their business. So the fact that you're likely to get a better fit across different parts of your organization is something that's very appealing, and in many cases you find that these best-of-breed solutions can give you more value and a better fit with what you need in different parts of your organization. The other reason why best-of-breed is appealing to a lot of organizations is because it supports a more agile or more nimble approach to change within an organization. So we'll just call that agility for now. So that agility is something that's very appealing to organizations. And the reason it's more agile in many cases than a single ERP system is that you don't have to define all of your end-to-end processes and take on a big, massive undertaking with best-of-breed. You could pick off certain parts of your organization, certain processes, certain departments, certain functions, and find technologies that just address that part of the business. And oftentimes that's going to be lower cost and lower risk than taking on the entire big, massive, complex ERP implementation. And for a lot of organizations, that makes a lot of sense. It's easier to get, in many cases, alignment and support for a smaller investment that gives you incremental improvement than taking on a bigger, riskier ERP implementation. However, there's also risks with best-of-breed solutions as well. They're not as perfect as they may sound so far. The first is integration issues. When you have multiple systems, now you've got to figure out how you're going to tie those systems together so that your processes can flow end to end, so that your data can flow, so that you have one single source of truth for data and you're not worried about conflicting data in different systems. And that can be difficult and complex and risky and costly from an architecture and a technical perspective. Now, having said that, I'm going to come back to one point here with single ERP systems, and that is, even with a single ERP system, you still have to do a certain amount of integration because you have different modules within an ERP system. And those different modules require integration to the other modules. The only difference here is you've got one single system and a single tool set for integrating those systems, which makes it a little bit easier and faster and cheaper than in this case. So this puts more pressure on the organization from a technical perspective. It might add to your cost line item here on integration, but it may also be that you have the advantages here that outweigh that cost. And the other downside risk of best-of-breed solutions is that it oftentimes results in a lack of clarity around the bigger picture direction of your technology landscape. So I refer to this as a short-sighted digital strategy. It's not always a bad thing, but it can be. And let me explain what I mean by that. Let's just say you decide that your sales force, your sales organization is the area you want to start with, and they're chomping at the bit for a new CRM system so they can track leads better, close more deals, generate more revenue and commission, etc. So you may decide, let's go buy and implement a new CRM system. Nothing wrong with that. It can deliver immediate value. It allows you to be more agile. Great stuff, right? But at the end of the day, the challenge with that is now you may be picking a CRM system that doesn't support longer term needs from a technology perspective. Let's just say in the future, you also decide that you want to get a new manufacturing system or a new order management system, and that CRM system that you've deployed doesn't play nice with that other system. And if you haven't looked at the entire big picture in advance and planned that out, you might find yourself backed into a corner with a technology that works well for the sales team, but it's not there to support the longer-term digital strategy and roadmap of the organization. So one way around this, one way to mitigate that risk is to define your digital strategy up front, define what the best-of-breed tech stack is going to look like, and then start deploying it piece by piece as you see fit and as you prioritize. So having said all that, these are some of the pros and cons of best-of-breed. And now let's talk about custom development and platforms and how they compare to these two solutions as well. The third option we have to choose from is custom development or custom dev. And this term isn't nearly as cool as it used to be 20 or 30 years ago, but it's still something that's very relevant, something worth considering. And custom development essentially says we're not going to necessarily go buy anything off the shelf or out of the box. We're going to create our own technology. And it may sound crazy on the surface, but there is some advantage to this as well. Let me get to that here. First of all, probably most importantly, custom dev allows you to find the perfect fit. It's the only one of the 4 options where you are going to get exactly what you want if you do it right. These other options we talk about, the other 3, aren't going to give you what you want. You're inevitably going to end up with something that's a bit watered down and not quite what it is you want. And I hesitate to use the word perfect fit, but I think it is relevant here because in theory, you can do whatever you want with that technology. You can develop to do exactly what you want, how you want it, and it's something that can't be replicated by your customer. And that leads to a second benefit, which is it gives you a competitive advantage if you do it right. Now, in theory, these other 3 solutions can also give you a competitive advantage, but not to the same degree that a custom dev solution can. And not only is it giving you a competitive advantage, probably even more importantly is it's harder to replicate. This makes it a lot harder for a competitor to knock off or rip off your competitive advantage or those things that make you unique and make you better than your competition. If you do find what you're looking for in these other solutions, your competitors can go get that same solution and build that same competency within their organization. So this is the only one of the 3 that gives you a true, sustainable competitive advantage that's very hard to replicate across your competitors. Now, with these advantages, just like the other 3 options, comes some distinct disadvantages as well. First and foremost, this is an expensive solution. They're all expensive solutions, but this is probably the most expensive because you're not getting the benefit of R&D and scale and economies of scale that some of these other solutions provide from all the R&D and innovation that's invested by the software vendors. Here, you're creating the wheel yourself, which may be okay. It may be that you're creating this high barrier to entry that's going to be hard for vendors and your competitors to replicate, and maybe that's okay. But you have to make sure if you do custom dev, it's something that's actually giving you a distinct competitive advantage. Otherwise, why not just go with an off-the-shelf solution? The other disadvantage here is that this option is very hard to maintain. It's probably the hardest to maintain of the 4 options we talk about here. What I mean by this is you don't have the benefit of a software vendor constantly investing in R&D and innovation improvements to the technology. Now it's on you to maintain that. Not only is that expensive, but it's difficult. It's something you have to stay on top of. Chances are you're going to have to invest in a larger, more robust internal IT department, which, again, may be worth it if these advantages play out the way you think they will. So custom dev is something that is worth considering. It's probably the least discussed of the 4 options that we're going to talk about here today, but it is something that's often overlooked and underrated in the digital strategy space. Now, the 4th option is software platforms. And software platforms are a little different, similar to these 2, but a little bit different. A software platform is more than just an application. It's an actual platform that not only houses one or more applications, but it also gives you a framework to do what I might call semi-custom development. You have tools that you can use to build on a platform that's a common platform that's supported by a vendor, used by other customers and people throughout the community. So it takes away some of these downside risks of truly custom dev solutions and gives you somewhat of a best of all worlds solution here. That's probably the biggest advantage here, is that software platforms give you that best of all worlds. Now, before I move on, let me give you a couple examples of what a software platform is. If you've ever heard of Salesforce, you may think of that as a CRM software vendor, and it is. But a lot of people don't know that Salesforce also has a Force platform that Salesforce was built on, but they've opened it up to third-party developers to create other types of applications on that Salesforce platform. So if you go buy Salesforce, you don't only limit yourself to Salesforce, you also open yourself up to third parties that have created solutions built on that same platform. So it's almost like a best-of-breed sort of solution, but it's all on the same platform, and that can save you time and money and give you that integration and cost effectiveness that you may not get with some of these other options. Another example is Palantir, which is sort of a, I don't want to say middleware on steroids, but it's probably the best way to simplify it right now. You can actually find a review of Palantir right here. If you watch this video right here, I do a review of Palantir. But they're a solution that actually integrates multiple systems. So if you've got these old legacy systems that are well entrenched within your organization and hard to replace, you could put in a product like Palantir that gives you more advanced workflows and AI and reporting and things like that. and a better user interface, all on that platform that ties together your legacy systems. And then another example I'll share is a company called Rapid. And Rapid is spelled R-A-P-P-I-T, and it's actually founded by Jan Baan, who founded Baan Software back in the 90s, if you remember that. He and his team have created a platform that ties together multiple systems and provides integrated workflows, more of a composable ERP approach. So those are just a few examples. There's a lot more software platforms out there. Even some of the traditional ERP vendors are moving towards that platform model. NetSuite, for example, now is opening their platform to third parties to create different systems. Microsoft Dynamics has also opened up its platform to third-party developers. So platforms are a thing of the future, and a lot of organizations are moving that direction. Which leads me to another advantage in that software platforms, in many cases, can allow you to leverage the existing technology you already have. This can be a very appealing factor for big organizations, especially, and very mature, older organizations. If they have legacy systems that have been around for a long time, well entrenched in the organization, it's going to be highly risky, in some cases impossible, to rip those systems out and replace them. You may navigate that by putting a platform in place that ties together multiple systems that you already have. At the very least, it buys you time to have a better user interface and take advantage of AI and better reporting and analytics. Buys you more time to take advantage of that modern technology while you figure out how you might replace some of those back-end legacy systems. But platforms also come with downside risks. Platforms can be a bit harder to maintain because you're inherently now talking about having multiple systems, much like the best-of-breed option. It also requires you to have more of an internal IT staff that can support those multiple systems and stay on top of advancements and other possibilities within that platform. But again, if you find that the advantages are there, that disadvantage or that investment might be acceptable. And then much like the best-of-breed option, the software platform option makes it easier to get fragmented between your multiple systems that you're deploying. Just because you have multiple systems or applications on the same platform doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to integrate magically. You now have to figure out how you can address the fragmentation and pull together the multiple workflows and data sources. So now that we understand what the 4 different options are, let's talk about how to decide which one is best for you. So we've got 4 major buckets of options that we can pursue with our digital strategy. How do we know which one is best? Now, each one has strengths and weaknesses. There's no silver bullet. There's no perfect answer. So what you really have to do is look at different parts of your business and determine what the priorities are for different parts of your business. Not only that, you also have to look strategically as an organization, what are your long-term goals and objectives as an organization, and which one of these solutions are going to best support you. Now, one thing that's really important to point out is that you don't have to choose just one solution. You might find that you're going to lead with a single ERP approach, but you might augment it with a custom dev approach where you're going to take some of your areas of competitive advantage, very isolated. You're going to invest in some custom development to bolt onto your ERP system. Or you might find that you're going to find an ERP system, but you're going to find an ERP system that also enables a certain platform that opens things up to third-party developers. So this is where Microsoft Dynamics 365 becomes appealing. This is where NetSuite or Salesforce might become appealing. So you look at ERP systems that also have a platform, and that might be an option as well. What often happens with our clients, too, is that they say, we want to lead with a single ERP system, but we're going to use a best-of-breed approach to fill in some of the gaps, to fill in the blanks of what a single ERP system can't do. A lot of times clients think they're going to just pick one system, and then they quickly realize no one system is going to give them everything they need, so they end up with sort of a hybrid solution there. So there's a lot of ways to mix and match, but you really have to understand what your goals and objectives as an organization are in terms of how you're trying to scale the organization, how much you're trying to standardize operations, how much are you trying to outsource your IT department, how risk tolerant are you, what does your budget look like? All those factors and considerations need to be incorporated into the decision process here. So that was my view of how to navigate and choose amongst the 4 major digital strategy options that most organizations have. What were some of your thoughts, takeaways, and follow-up questions from that conversation, Darian?
Yeah, it was a really great video overall. I want to walk through kind of the main things that you were talking about in the video. One of them was walking people through the best of breed strategy, where you stitch together multiple systems across departments. One, how do you kind of avoid end up looking like a Frankenstein system, you could say, that's impossible to integrate with your business?
Well, I think that's a great point, and this was a big deal 10 or 20 years ago. A lot of companies found themselves in situations and still find themselves in situations where they have a Frankenstein or a spaghetti bowl diagram of different systems that are intertwined, sort of, and mix and match, and it's kind of a mess from an architecture and system perspective. But things are changing now to where it is more realistic, with more advanced APIs and integration tools, and certainly AI is almost in some ways can act as a semi integration tool because it can go search information across platforms now without needing to necessarily build all these different APIs and connectors between systems. But point being, there's a lot of different tools now that make integration more feasible. Now, having said that, you do want to make sure you choose tools. If you're going to go down that best of breed path, you want to make sure you're choosing tools that are open and flexible and have that open architecture and play nice with other systems. Compare SAP and Microsoft. SAP, generally speaking, is more closed off, and it's more focused on the SAP suite of products and trying to integrate those. Not so much playing nice with other third parties that aren't in the SAP ecosystem. Microsoft, on the other hand, is just the other extreme is a totally open architecture, and you can plug and play all kinds of systems in there. You can go to ISVs and get different versions of Microsoft Dynamics 365 that have been rewritten or modified to fit a certain industry or function. So they've sort of gone the other extreme and said flexibility and openness is their strength or their thing. SAP is more about the standardization and sort of the standard set of tools, and not necessarily bringing in outside third parties. So you've just got to look at what the options, what options are going to play or fit your path best, and not all technologies are going to fit best in that best of breed environment.
Yeah, for sure. And then to talk about one more area that you talked about, which was the platform strategy. So like the Salesforce, Microsoft, Palantir, built on a flexible foundation instead of like a hard coding from scratch. What is the biggest difference between a platform strategy and a best of breed?
Yeah, great question. So best of breed would be, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find the best financial system, the best warehouse management system, the best MES system, the best sales automation tool, and then I'm going to figure out how to pull them all together. A platform strategy is saying, I'm going to go find a platform that has multiple third-party options available on it. So different apps that I can plug and play within that same platform. So for example, if I go the best of breed route, I might end up with, NetSuite as my back office financials, and then I'm going to have Salesforce as my CRM system, and then I might have Workday as my human capital management system, and then I'm going to plug those. I'm going to fit those all together and integrate them across the different platforms or the different systems. If I chose a platform strategy, that would be like, I'm going to go to Salesforce, which offers a platform, or NetSuite, which offers a platform, and I'm going to just focus my efforts on, say, Salesforce. And I may or may not use Salesforce CRM. It's not really about whether or not Salesforce CRM is the best fit, but I might look at other third-party developed solutions on the Salesforce platform, because now I know if I choose amongst different providers in that platform, it's not the same system, but it's still the same platform. It's a little bit easier to integrate. So on one hand, you're limiting your options a bit, because now you're not looking at the entire population of best of breed options. You're just looking at what's available in that platform. So you are limiting your options, but on the other hand, it does make integration easier, because the interoperability of those different applications built on the same platform is going to be easier, generally speaking, than a best of breed. So if you can find what you need within one platform, that is sort of a best case scenario. But the problem is, a lot of times companies can't find everything they need within one platform. So therefore they end up going with more of a best of breed approach, where they have multiple systems and multiple platforms.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. But yeah, I think this episode overall was really great. We hit on a lot of different things, which is awesome.
Yeah, a lot of AI-ish stuff and a lot of stuff not related to AI and digital strategy and whatnot. So I hope you found it helpful. I'd love to hear your feedback from the audience here, feedback on anything we talked about in this episode, but in particular, how are you using AI in your organization? I'd love to hear any use cases or examples you have. And even as it relates to the 4 strategies we just talked about, if there's a certain strategy you've seen work particularly well, or maybe it hasn't worked well for your organization, I'd love to hear your feedback there. So leave your comments in the comments below, and we'll try to get to those in future episodes to address certain comments and questions you might have there. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Darian, for being part of this show as always. Thank you to our panelists from Priority Software, Infotech Research Group, Oracle NetSuite at Epicor. Thank you for joining and being here and part of the panel discussion. Be sure to register for Stratosphere, our tech agnostic conference coming up in late August. You can join remotely or in person in Denver, Colorado. Go to stratosphere2025.com to learn more. Use the discount code EARLYBIRD to get 20% off. And we both Darian and I will be there. We hope to see you there. And the panelists you just heard from today will be there. We'll have speakers next week that are part of Stratosphere that will be on the show. So be sure to check out episode 232 coming up next week for that Stratosphere follow-up. So thanks, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care.